We'll start. Now we're recording locally, and now we should be going live.
And I'll check notification to make sure, because
title.
once you go Facebook Live, it sends out notifications to everybody who likes C3, so...
I still don't believe we're live, so just so you know.
And then, yeah, let me see. Your taste. Oh, good. I think you just hit enter, or choose that, and then it sends another one. I mean, it could be. There could be a chosen video game at some point.
It could be.
That'd be nice.
I'd play it.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, and we're gonna go live here. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Alright, we are now live.
Absolutely.
Recording language drive. Okay. Alright, well, we do gotta pull it up on the phone so we can see questions and stuff like that, so...
Yep.
That's a good point.
So this is Kyle and Josh. We're here live on C3 Facebook for the first time. And we are with Will Dickstein, author of... What is this?
You just destroyed his name.
I'm sorry.
Let the man introduce himself.
Oh, sorry.
Redeem your last name.
Should just quit now.
That's all right. That's okay. You know, that's the kind of blunder that you have to make your first time live on Facebook. So
that's right.
I'm happy I was here for you. So it's Will Dickstein.
Yeah, we're going live, so we can't go back and edit that, unfortunately.
Not that we'd edit it out normally.
Exactly. You know. All right. Well, so Will, tell us what you're doing on our live stream.
Okay, so quick recap for people who didn't catch the first podcast we did last year. Will Dickstein, like I just said, creator of Ch05En. It's an expansive science fantasy universe. The premise is that in the not-too-distant future, we've mapped out a gene we realize destines people for greatness. Maybe you're CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Maybe you get superpowers. To date, there are 9 short works of prose, 4 comics, and on March 1st, another 4 comics that are going to be coming out in a second volume. I sent them to you guys for an advanced review, and that's what we're doing here today, talking about some comics.
Perfect. Well, you come to the right place since, you know, we're a comic channel and all that. So, so I'm going to pick up... Go ahead.
No, you go. Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, so I'm going to basically pick up with... so, of all of the characters and everything that you've done in the universe so far, what made you choose Grizz to receive the Volume 2 over anyone else?
Right on. So just a little bit more backstory real quick. Comics follow Grizz. Grizz is a specien, means he has animalistic traits. In Ch05En, people's genes have a strength level as well. There are 5 different strength levels, basically. The gene, people with a stronger gene have stronger traits in whatever their gene sort of does. So Grizz, as a specien, he has a pretty strong gene, so he looks more animal than man. Grizz is a retired cape. So capes are government-funded superheroes. He's come out of retirement in the first round of comics, basically to finish his last mission. At the end of the first volume of comics, we find out that his former lover, who was killed on his last mission, was actually posing as the primary villain So in trying to complete his last mission and kill that villain, he realizes that it's his former lover, and instead of killing him, decides to run away with him. So Volume 2 picks up there. Okay, so why did I choose Grizz? I chose Grizz for a couple of reasons. The biggest, honestly, was that he was a subsidiary character in one of the novellas, and this was my first real sort of foray into trying to do comics, and so my expectation was that they were only going to be so good. Just because with the pros, I had to sort of get a lot of words out before I really liked the products I was putting out. And so I wanted to start with a character that, if it was something that I was proud of but wished I had done better, I knew that I would be emotionally sort of okay with it being, a 6 or 7 out of 10, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then the other reason was because I like all the works to tie into each other. The first 5 works all revolve around the same sort of plot line. The 3 works that came after that are origin stories for characters who are in those first 5 works. I'm writing some more short works now that are revolving around the factions that are in the universe, just to give more backstory, and then incorporate more little side stories into the works that are already out now. So when I started doing the comics, and I knew that I wanted them to tie into some of the works that were already available, the first thing I wanted to do was continue one of the stories, and I started with episode 2 because, like Grizz, overall, episode 2 was also probably the novella that I had the least amount of sort of emotional investment in. I like Hunter as a character, and I like that storyline a lot. I'm very proud of it, but I like the other ones a lot more when it comes down to it.
And I mean, you're the author, so you get to pick anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah.
And then who'd you have do the art? Was there, basically who did the art? Was there difference for inking and lettering and coloring, or?
So actually, that's a great question, but no, there wasn't. When I was trying to get it ramped up, you kind of go through a process, I think, learning process, right? Just like anything else. And the comics fell flat for about 2 years. It would get started and then it would stop, and just kind of like any other project, eventually you got to get enough money together to pay somebody who's just going to do it. So I ended up going on Reddit, to the comic book collab website, subreddit, and I was just super honest in my post, and I was like, here's how much money I've got for the project. It was a lower page rate than I think a lot of people would traditionally go for, especially here in the States, but I was able to find a duo who, I think this is all they do. It's these guys, Lucas and Camille. They're in Poland. So the combination of the exchange rate with the higher payout, I think, really made it worth it for them. At the end of the day, they ended up getting close to like $45 a page, which is really, again, not great for pencils, inks, colors, and lettering. But the total payout for them was pretty substantial once you kind of do the conversion. So I think they were okay with it because of that. And when we started up the second round of comics, I offered them the opportunity to renegotiate and let them know, like, I have a little bit more money in the bank this time. What are you comfortable with? And they quoted me a page rate that was almost exactly the same as the first one. So, I don't know if that was because they wanted to or because they were okay with it. But at the end of the day, they were a great deal.
That's great. And people might say, wow, $45 a page. He shelled out a lot. But really, when you think about it, how much time they actually spend. I can't remember. Who was it? Was it Jack Kirby? I think he used to turn out, what was it? I think it was either 6 or 8 pages a day of drawing. I don't even know if that was coloring, but everyone would say how amazing that pace was, to turn that out. And then you got to figure with, if you're only making $45, for a page, that could be you could only be getting done 2 or 3 pages a day.
Right. And, to be clear too, that was, I might have said that wrong now that I think about it, but it was 45 American a page. So, it was a much higher conversion rate, in Polish. I don't know what the currency is. Anyway, so yeah, you're exactly right. They're really fast. They would send me 5 pencils a week, and then the following week send me the 5 finished pages and 5 new pencils. So they were, these guys are machines. You know, people who I think are really into sort of taking art apart, or who draw themselves. I think when they look at the art in the Chosen comics that are out right now, it's easy for them to see some of the tricks that they used to go so fast. But this is part of a larger sort of plan for all of the products. Is all the works right now, they follow different characters, right? One novella follows one guy, another novella follows another guy. So the comics only follow Grizz. Everything's told in first person. And because he's mostly animal, I didn't want the artwork to be super fine. And so, there are a lot of scenes that are kind of blurred, and some of the pages are all one color. They'll be all blue or all yellow and stuff like that. If the dialogue is more important than the action, that's certainly the way they went with it. And I was totally okay with that, because his sight would be different. He would be relying on different senses, and he'd be closer to, how an animal with less cones would see, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I didn't even think about that. It's really crazy once you break down the science of comic books, because there's such a huge difference in writing a comic book versus a novella. And I was a huge fan of your novellas, and don't get me wrong, I still loved the Chosen, the Grizz ones. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, how is he possibly going to capture what I love about the novella? Because that once the action starts hitting, I just want to read so many words page after page. And with a comic book, you really have to kind of slow down and take in the surroundings and stop and smell the roses. And I know I read it at least a couple times, because you're, like you said, with the colors, and there's some stuff that I missed because there's so much going on, and I just get so excited. I just want to keep flipping the page, but it's like, whoa, hold on, what did I miss here? So it's really crazy, and I really like their artwork, what they were able to do. It's unique. There's really you can't say, oh, it just ripped off this comic or this comic. It has its own feel. So I think you chose the right guys.
Thanks. Yeah. They've been really great. They're super communicative. Like I said, they were really fast. This will be the last volume that we do together. I'm gonna let Grizz hang out for a minute, and I'm actually to sort of different format too. Right now, what I've been doing is 4 issues in one volume, and sort of just releasing the trade paperback in physical form and online. And so from here, what I'm going to do is start taking it into more of a one-shot format, where I tell a totally cohesive story just in one book. And the comics right now, before the additional artwork, are right around 72 pages. I'm going to cut that down closer to probably 50 or 55 per new comic, and just tell sort of one story that way in 3 or 4 acts. And what we're going to see, though, is because every comic that comes out is a different character, we're going to start seeing different art styles as well. So the script that I have sort of in the hopper right now, which is going to be the next one-shot, that is going to have a totally different art style. I'm going to work with a new artist after this one.
Oh, cool. I will say, too, kind of going back on the art, it definitely captures the tone and has a feeling all its own. If you're... I personally am not a huge art guy. I appreciate it, but for a book, I need... some people can say, well, as long as there's a good story, that's all I care about. Some people are like, I like the cover, and that's literally why I bought the book. I'm kind of in between the two, where I need both. I need, good visuals, and I need a good story. And definitely the Volume 2 had both of those. It felt like its own world. My screen went black for a sec. We're all good. But
yeah, no.
But yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it definitely had its own world, and it felt bigger this time to me. Like, it didn't feel like last time. The last volume felt kind of contained, and that might have been story or whatever. But I just felt that this volume felt bigger. It felt like we went more places. It felt, and it felt, I guess, kind of the city / camp that they go to, like, that felt very fleshed out, very real to me. I guess I don't know what the terminology for it was, but what they said in the Volume 2. But we'll Was that a city, or what was it? Was it kind of just an outpost?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they go to it's an encampment, I guess would be the term. It essentially is it's just a small town, but
Okay.
surrounded by walls. It's full of genetic extremists, and the genetic extremists are one of the factions that exist in the Chosen universe. There hasn't been a lot of information about them yet in the prose or sort of overall. Two of the works of prose deal with them in some way. Primarily, it's Jane in the Origins anthology. Jane is actually from she grows up as a genetic extremist, and at the age of 18, genetic extremists get a day out in the world. And so her whole story is she gets this day out in the world, and she's like, it's really cool out here, not sure I want to go back. And so her story is them actually chasing after her because she's so powerful. But
so it's like the
so they go to
Yeah, I was gonna say, so she's Amish, huh?
yeah, it's the Rumspringer.
yeah, it's not like yeah. So the whole thing though is that these encampments are all over the world, especially in the northern hemisphere. The leader, as you saw, is Ghost. He's in the comic, and his face is hidden because of what he can do, because of his chosen gene. And so, not to dive too heavy into one of the other works, but essentially, Ghost has the ability to implant ideas or ideals even into people's brains. So his whole backstory that's been shared so far is that, one time he found himself on national television using his power, and overnight he had like 15,000 followers. So, we won't go too heavy into that, but yeah, essentially they're in what is not unlike what would be the equivalent to like sort of Nazis. They very much believe that pure and powerful chosen genes are what the future should be for the human race. So that's why everyone that's in there has these crazy powers and stuff, because literally they will recruit somebody if they have a strong enough chosen gene.
Nice. And is there do you have anything else out with Ghost in it? Because of all the new characters I should say that were introduced, he was the one that intrigued me the most, and I would say that's kind of a compliment. Well, it is a compliment, not kind of. It is a compliment to your writing. The fact that he was a very, he was what, 4, 5, 6 pages maybe, but he was very intriguing. Like you said, he didn't show his face, and just kind of, I don't know. Like he seemed like he was in charge of the whole thing, but he wasn't. I mean, like like kind of people. They listened to him, but it felt like they didn't want to, kind of, I don't know. It was weird, but it was very cool. Like, kind of, definitely made me want to know more about him, or more stories with him in it.
Yeah, he's got a speaking role actually. Speaking role. Yeah, he's a pretty heavy character in Ripsaw, which is also in the Origins anthology. Excuse me. And Ripsaw actually, if you recall from the first volume of Grizz, is he's in the first volume because he is also a subsidiary character to the same sort of level as Grizz is in episode 2. Right? So Ripsaw, first introduced in Chosen episode 2, I told his backstory, the last act of which ties directly into the end of episode 2 in his origin story, and part of his origin story has to do very heavily with Ghost. So Ghost is very prominent in that novella, and as a matter of fact, if you go back and read it, you'll get to see how people are recruited to become genetic extremists, and sort of the ways that they target people in the Chosen universe.
That was the one. Oh, forgive me. It's been a while since I've read. I kind of binge read all of your work, but was that the one with the where they were at the school, the Acadia one, and then there was like the new recruits? They were like being trained, sort of. Or is that a different thinking of?
Yeah. So Chosen episode 2 starts out that way.
Okay.
With Hunter as the main character.
Yep.
Yeah, and then so the last act of Ripsaw's origin story goes back to that same timeline.
Okay.
But the first 2 parts of that novella are are pretty much a totally different story, sort of everything leading up to that. Ripsaw that's probably, to date, that's probably my favorite piece that I put out. I wrote it really quickly because I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and there was stuff that I was waiting to introduce into the universe that I had, like, I'd written down like 4 or 5 things, and when it came time for me to do Ripsaw's origin story, it all just tied in super perfectly. I was really proud of it, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that eliminates my next question I was going to ask. Since you have so much work out since the last time that we've talked, I was going to ask what your favorite one is, but you beat me to it, so. I do have to say that my favorite novella that was, I believe it was the latest one where it followed the camera guy, and that one was like so ridiculously well written, it blew my mind. So whenever I try to introduce anyone to Ch05En, that's the one I always send them to, and then I hope they fall in love with the rest, as they should. But
the thing about it too is I think my writing gets a little bit better every time I put something out, just because you get yeah.
I would say your writing is definitely better from the first volume to the second volume, and that's not to say that the first volume was bad or anything else like that. It's just the first one felt very much like, oh, this is happening, that's cool, and then the second one very much so feels like it's a very cohesive story, and in terms of, you know what I mean, like it feels very well paced, and it feels. The first one feels more introduction, so it doesn't feel like it has to, kind of go into that certain storytelling box. But the second one definitely, I felt more into the characters because I felt like we were over that hump, and I felt like we were going along for it. But yeah, I think I blew through it in 20 minutes, a half hour. It was just like that. So, and that's to me, that's always the best compliment I can give a book is, did I have to put it down? You know what I mean? And do I want to read it again to to see what I missed and things like that? And that was kind of the book, I just went through and I kind of looked over at the side as I was going down. I was like, how much do I have left? Oh, I'm almost done. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. I think a couple of things really contributed to that. The first one was, getting to know sort of what I had to do to produce the best product with Lucas and Camille. So, when I wrote the first script for the first volume, I didn't know who I was going to be working with, right? So there were some visual details that I didn't realize wouldn't get sort of communicated to the reader as well as I'd hoped. And the script itself, at the end of the day, it didn't lend itself very well to the art style that we decided to go with. And so, there was stuff that like I had changed sort of on the fly to try and add some better scripting or some better narration or just whatever, because there were details that I wanted to show visually and tell the story that way that as we were doing it, were just kind of falling through the cracks, right? Mm-hmm. So what I actually did was I wrote one of the one-shots I'm going to do in between Volume 1 and Volume 2, just to get some more experience setting up the script and getting through it quickly and stuff like that. And then a couple months after that, went back and wrote Volume 2 for Grizz. And when I was doing that, I was really able to approach it from the mindset of, I can't put this in here as a visual detail. I have to communicate it some other way kind of thing. So this one, as you might have noticed, is much more narration heavy because it has to be. Mm-hmm. Grizz is talking to the audience a lot more, and I had a better idea too of once I knew what things we really couldn't do visually, I knew what I could put in there that they could really knock out of the park. So especially the scene with the armbar, I'm so proud of that, because how often do you see an armbar in comics? Number one.
Maybe the WWE ones, but
yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, that's true. But other than that, never.
Yeah, he's got it too. Grizz has got him locked up tight. He's got. I won't tell you who he's got in an armbar, but he's got the elbow right on his hips where it's supposed to be, and in a big way. That's where I'm trying to go too. I'm a huge fan of R.A. Salvatore, and he's very much the swordplay author. and has been for a long time. And I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'd like to be the the MMA author or the grappling author. If it makes sense for the character, I really try and work it in, and I make sure that the way that I write it is as accurate as possible every time. So,
what's some of your favorite feedback that you've gotten so far with Volume 2 or even Volume 1? I know I keep an eye on the Amazon reviews, but what are some of your favorites that you've gotten back?
So, this happened recently, so we'll talk about that. I just had an advanced review go live the other day, and or I think it was 2 days ago, right before this. And one thing that got called out twice by this website, it's a fan-based press, was that they think I've done a good job of sort of normalizing sexuality. I don't promote it as part of any of the works, whether or not the character goes one way or another, but Grizz is in a homosexual relationship with another male character. And, where that really comes from is I think it's important. It's set in the future. And in the future, what I'd like to see is that it's normalized. Laverne Cox was on the Daily Show recently and had to talk about how many bills have been instituted or have been put forth in different states just about like transgender people using bathrooms. And, I'm not trying to be super outspoken about it, but in my opinion, people should be allowed to be comfortable with their sexuality. And so the same way that Doctor Who normalizes it every time he's in the future, where, it's almost a throwaway line when someone mentions that they're in a same-sex relationship, that's the way I treated it. Fan-based press thought it was important enough to call out. I really appreciate that because I think we all should be doing our part to try and make things better. And at the end of the day, I'm going to conventions. People are buying these products for their kids, and if I can positively influence the next generation to treat people better than we're treating them now, I'm going to go for it. So that's probably my favorite piece of feedback, was that the individual who has been reviewing my comments specifically on that website really appreciated it, and I really appreciated that they appreciated it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. And I too agree. Like, I loved how well it was handled because I wasn't expecting it, but it's like, boom, there it is. That's what it is, and that was all there is to it, and that's all that needed to be said because, like you said, it's normal. It's just part of what it is. So, I too am a pretty big fan of how well that was handled. So, that was kind of a loaded question. I was kind of hoping that was kind of the response we were going to get because I wanted to bring it up. So, I'm glad. So my next question is, so you obviously get your reviews and stuff on Amazon. So you've been going to a lot more conventions and stuff lately. If you guys haven't signed up for the Ch05En newsletter, highly recommend you do because you get free bonus fiction from it, and you kind of get into the world of Ch05En and keeping up with that. You've been to a lot of trade shows and stuff like that. So how have those been going? Have you been recognized? Has anyone come up to you and giving your autograph or anything, or getting any feedback from that?
Right. Two-part answer. First part, how are they going? Conventions are amazing, and if you're making comics, you need to go because, oh my gosh, I mean, okay. So the first one I did was Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con last year, and it's probably our biggest show in Las Vegas, other than Wizard World, which isn't coming back anymore. But when I was doing research on which conventions to go to and to get started with, because especially last year, there was so much of an investment in the first volume, and then in getting the promotional materials together, the banners and the signage and stuff like that, that when it came down to it, the budget was just kind of really tapped. So I really only had the money to go to like 1 or 2 shows. And between Wizard World and Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con, the impression that I got was that there are really comic book conventions that people go to get autographs from, Matt Smith. We'll go back to Doctor Who because that's who was here last year for Wizard World. And then there are conventions that people go to where they're there to buy comics. And so the feeling that I got between the 2 really big ones in Las Vegas was that Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con is the one you go to when you want to buy comics, right? So I mean, we did really well. We did so much better than I thought we were going to do. And at the time, I wasn't printing physical copies of the of the prose of the anthologies. I was only printing the physical copies of the comics, and we were doing digital giveaways of the written works and stuff like that. If people signed up for the newsletter and everything, and so all I had was really one physical product to sell. We brought 75 copies across the 3 days, and I sold like 66 of them. I mean, we really knocked it out.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, and so I say we, right? So I had a buddy come help me the first day, and then the second and the third day, it was my fiance Cassandra and my brother Charlie, and everyone that showed up was really great. I didn't want to be there and just be sitting at the table, so we actually got a corner booth space. They set it up in 3 tiers. So usually there's Artist Alley, right, which is just tables, and then there are the really big exhibitor booths, and then Amazing also does like a middle tier sort of booth that they don't put like right in the middle of the show, but you're kind of on the outskirt. But I got really lucky because I was right next to the front door. So we weren't sitting behind the table. I mean, we're out all the way in the front of the space that we had and just actively pulling people in. I don't know if you guys have Ch05En where you are, but I worked at this tea shop called Ch05En for a little while when I was younger, and a big part of that is actively sampling the tea. And so you're outside in front of the store, and everyone that walks by, you're like, hey, you want a sample of this tea? Hey, you want a sample of this tea? Just kind of over and over all day until somebody comes in, and then you got to try and sell them tea, right? So I worked there for a while and was just really used to, if somebody walks by, I'm totally, it's normalized for me to just sit there and actively try and sell, right? So I was really, really impressed with everyone who came to help me because they jumped right in. And, even in the beginning when they sort of had to just pull somebody in and then send them to me so I could actually work through the pitch, towards the end, that wasn't the case at all. We were all actively selling. And I mean, we talked to so many people and it was really, really great. So the conventions and from that standpoint are going really well. And then the sort of second part of that answer, it's so rewarding. I mean, no one has really recognized me. I maybe 2 or 3 people. It's the same smaller group of people that I think kind of go to all the shows in town. So there are some people, who once I started seeing them, because I did 3 shows last year in town, and so towards the end of the year, the one I did in December, Great American Comic Con, there were a couple of people who showed up who were even in the same cosplay, and it was just like, hey, good to see you again, and there's a tight-knit sort of community of the same local artists who go to all of the shows, and they have own kind of group of friends and stuff, and so all of them, when you see them, you get recognized there. But the other thing though is I'm actually getting feedback from people in town instead of just sort of people who find me on Amazon or whatever, and I got this email actually at Amazing, which really solidified that I'm like always going to be doing the show. My second day, I woke up and it was this 13-year-old kid. I forgot his name. I feel so bad because it was so great. But I mean, he wrote me that night to tell me that he was like halfway done with the comic and he was really enjoying it. And that was like, I like that like blew me away. I was like, wow. And it's because like even now when I find a new author and I really love. I mean, authors are totally accessible. I've written to so many people. Like I've written to Anne Rice, Richard Lee Byers, Christopher Golden. I've written to Neil Gaiman. I've written to almost everyone who has a piece of Brandon Sanderson. Almost everyone who has a piece of fiction that I really enjoy. I've always sent them an email, probably from like 15 until like a couple weeks ago, man. And so him doing that was like, I was like, whoa, like we made it. Like it felt really amazing.
Yeah,
so,
it's huge.
Even the shows where we didn't sell as well, because at the subsequent shows that I went to later in the year, we really not even close to as good as we did at Amazing. Even then, you're talking to so many people because we're actively trying to sell. People stop by because we pull them in and get to tell them about it. And even if they don't buy anything, and they're just like, oh yeah, it sounds cool, but it's not for me. Or, you get to have a conversation about something. Like it just feels really great to be out there and to be recognized for something that is totally for me, instead of selling somebody else's product. Like that's it. It's got my name on it. Like people are putting together everything I'm telling to them and they're associating it directly with me, and that's just, it's so cool. Like it's really, really great. I got out of sales a long time ago and it feels totally different when you're selling yourself. Like, it's just so great. So the conventions are great.
Nice. And then I kind of want to go back a little bit too and comment on where they, because I also felt the same way, where they said that, you know, you normalize sexuality. Kind of the one thing that really pulled me out of the new Star Wars, the episode 8, I believe, yeah, 8, was when she helps him up. And or when he said, or when she says, "Don't grab my hand," or whatever it was when they're running away. And to me, it's always kind of really a balancing act of, like, I saw that and all right, I know why you put that in there. You know, why can't you just be a strong character? Why do you have to call it out and say, "Hey, we're just as good as the boys are"? You know, it felt like the whole film stopped for a point. And your book never felt like they said, it never felt like it stopped for that point. It felt like, you know, that just happened to be an aspect of this very interesting character, and it didn't feel forced or anything. And like you said, it felt very normalized. And I agree with them that you should definitely be complimented for that. And also the second part is, so is Wizard World backed out of Las Vegas then? I haven't been keeping up. Is that something they've been doing? Are they running less shows? Because I know for a while they had God, it was damn near one a weekend. Or
Yeah.
a weekend.
So to be honest, I really haven't kept up with it. You know, once I started meeting some of the people who, because, you know, look, there are guys out there who make their living off of $10 prints. You know what I mean? I've met a couple of really, really solid artists who, like, that's what they do for a living, is draw custom covers and sell their prints, you know? So, so once I met, like, a couple of really sort of big names on the circuit, like Shelby Robertson, Ryan Kincaid, and stuff like that, once I started keeping track of them, I've just been going to the shows they go to instead of sort of being my own person and doing my own research. It just made more sense to, you know, if it's their livelihood, literally, then I'm probably just going to go to the shows that they go to, because that's how they make a living. And there are a lot more smaller conventions that try to get started all the time, you know, including in Las Vegas. Like, it was Great American Comic-Con's second or third year. And one thing I do know is that's a sort of heavy criticism of the convention scene, is that over the last sort of decade, I think it was Bleeding Cool put out a pretty big article on it not too long ago, maybe in the last 4 months, is that, you know, in comparison to 10 or 15 years ago, where this was really sort of a niche industry or market, you know, now, yeah, Wizard World was having conventions every weekend, you know, in different cities. Amazing is really not far off from that. I think they have at least 5 shows that I can think of in pretty big places. So, you know, I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know if there just wasn't a good turnout or what, but, you know, Wizard World was the one, like I said, where they have really big names that come in. And so, you know, I'm not sure how sustainable that is, really, as a business model. You know, like, you're paying, you know, I mean, I don't know anything about it, really, but you imagine that you're paying, you know, the rent for the couple of days to whatever stadium or convention center that you're in, and then you're paying the stars their fees, and then, you know, how much can you really make back? Because the tickets are, you know, between $40 and $60 to get in, depending on what you want to do. So sometimes as high as 80 or 100 if you're prepaying for autographs and stuff. So,
yeah.
And I thought, you know, I like the idea of you going to the amazing one, because when I think of the Comic-Con, you know, like you said, the bigger names are the draw. The one I went to in Minneapolis, I mean, unfortunately, I don't remember any of the indie guys that I talked to, and I walked around the floor for 2-3 days, and I unfortunately can't even name one, you know, like one person that I remember, because, I mean, it's cool to get your name and stuff there, but that's not why you go to Comic-Con, you know, that's not the draw. Whereas something like the Great American or a smaller one, I think you have a better chance of getting more of the comic book fan, the people who are willing to go out and give indie comics a try. So I you know, I definitely can see the standpoint behind that.
yeah, I think you can really see it in the marketing for the convention itself. You know, So like San Diego Comic-Con, as an example, will market the television and movie stars that are going to be there, and market the big names, big comic book creator names that are going to be there, right? And when it came to Wizard World and Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con, the way that I really figured it out was Wizard World was pretty much only marketing that they had Doctor Who there, and Amazing was only marketing that they had big creators. I think the biggest creator that was there last year was the guy who does Ninja Turtles. Can't remember his name. I think it's Brian.
Kevin Eastman?
Kevin Eastman. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, that just fell out of my brain. And then this year they just put out the guest list, and it is Todd McFarlane is probably the biggest one that's going to be there. So, there's a real dichotomy that way. You can really and yeah, you're just going to get different crowds of people. So.
And the other thing too is you said that was their second one that they ever did, right? The Great American.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's good to kind of get in like a head start, as they're growing, because if it does take off and it does get bigger, I mean, then you're going to be like one of the original acts, so it just gives you that much more of a place, set in stone there. So
yeah, the great thing is as someone who's signing up for a booth, usually if you re-up right away, like at Amazing, I got, I think, like over 40% off of this year because we signed right back up for the next year when everything was shutting down, and that was really great. So if I do well at these shows, that's pretty much exactly what I do. Is I just turn right back around and put whatever money I made at the show right back into the next year if I did well. And this year actually we're going to be going out on at least once to it was called Stan Lee's Comic-Con, but now it's called Kamikaze for the first year ever. For whatever reason, they're taking his name off of it. It's in, I think it's in LA, but it's in California, so it's not too far. But yeah, we're gonna get out of town for the first time this year. I'm really excited. I was trying to go to Long Beach Comic Con, which is actually this month, but just couldn't make it happen. Just couldn't make it happen. So
you're gonna do some like guerrilla marketing tactics.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe I'll get like a stencil and I'll just spray paint my logo everywhere.
Leave stickers.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, there you go. Rent a giant van or like the moving billboards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of to elaborate on that, I was gonna say I've up here we've got in Minnesota they've got Wizard World comes through, and then they've got the Midwest Comic Book Association, which puts on FallCon, and then I think they've got one in the summer too. One of them's one day, and they call it the One Day Wonder. But yeah, just walking through those doors, and if you've never been, I'd say when I would go to like a Wizard World Comic Con, it's a safe bet that 50% of the people there have never stepped foot inside of a comic store. I mean, it's really, which is fine. I mean, that's spectacle. It's like you said, they're advertising Doctor Who, as a main one. But when I set foot in Midwest, it clearly, it was a lot of people like yourself that were selling independent stuff. There was a lot of local people. Now I can't even think of his name. It was the guy who did Doomsday. Oh. He's from Minnesota. We always tout him as a friend from the show, even though he doesn't know us.
This is my forte, sorry.
I'm going to look it up here, but yeah.
While you do, what you're touching on is my only criticism of conventions and the convention life, I think, is that when it comes down to it, you're going to see very little literally anywhere on social media, in traditional media. You see so little of what probably 90% of the convention actually is. If you try to think back to all of the posts that go viral on Reddit or on Facebook or that you see in probably your local online periodicals, all you see are the pictures of people in costume.
Yep.
You are so hard-pressed to find anything after a convention anywhere that lets you know that there are people that you might know in your community who are there selling things. I mean, these conventions are craft shows with art thrown in, where you can buy books. Like, they're so much more interesting than just people in awesome costumes. You know, I'm not downplaying the cosplay. I love it. I think it's really great. I think it's an awesome way for people to try and get into the community. If that's what they're into, I'm like 100% about it. But at the end of the day, you're so hard pressed to find anybody taking pictures, unless it's for something like their own podcast or something, of the people in Artist Alley or of the booths. You know, like I think San Diego's a little bit different in that some of the really big brands go there. You know, you'll see a Sony booth or whatever. You'll see pictures of that because they have an amazing display. But you know, guys like me who just have some banners or like just a table runner and they've just got, you know, these products that they made, like you're so hard pressed to even like find out that those people are there, you know, unless you're already into the culture. You know what I mean? So that's like my only, yeah.
What you need to do now is you need to have a backdrop for the cosplayers to pose in front of.
Now that's a good idea.
So that way, you know,
yeah,
it's like boom, you know, because like when I was in the Minnesota one, you know, cosplaying and stuff, you want to take a picture with all the really cool ones. So now you're like in the middle of the walkway and you're like, oh, I want a picture. So now you're like blocking the way. So just have like a little set right by your booth. That way they can just walk there, and now you get every picture of the cosplayers now has Ch05En in it. So there's my idea, free idea for you.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
But that was one of the things that really stuck out to me too, because I had no idea what to expect when I went to the Wizarding World for the Comic-Con in Minneapolis. I went 3-4 years ago, and that's when I first started really getting into comics. So all I knew about it was, all right, cool, people dress up, and there's these famous people here. I had no idea that it was basically just a glorified craft show. And somehow I was able to walk around for 3 days, seeing the same booths over and over again, and not get bored. So it's really, you know, it's really cool. But yeah, like you said, there's more to it than just cosplaying. Like, don't get me wrong, that's a huge part of it, and I loved it. But yeah, there's just so much cool stuff there that's the reason. You know, whenever I get to go back, that's what I'm excited for. Is, you know, whatever, I'll dress up as something, but I'm excited to see all the cool stuff again. So,
yeah, totally, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then I got a question here. Is so you're still independent. You do everything like that. So what is the likelihood of an independent comic creator such as yourself going all Chance the Rapper? You know, kind of being independent and supporting yourself and going through without jumping, you know, throwing DC or Marvel onto your label. Is that something that, you know, every now and then you hear sparks of people, but they usually end up, you know, merging with one of the big two if they get enough, or they, you know, or IDW, you know, or something like that. Being you've kind of been around there and you know probably more independent creators than we do. Is there that can you get that stable base being your own creator, or do you have to sell out?
I don't think it's impossible. I definitely don't. For me personally, it's sort of another multi-point answer, right? So when you look at everything I'm doing with the pros and with the comics, I've essentially got two separate product lines, right? And when you look at me just with the pros, very much what I've always wanted to do was be traditionally published. So I'm actually actively querying literary agents right now with a full-length novel that I wrote last year. You know, as much as I would love it if the prose itself took off and I didn't have to do that, I really that's where I want to take the written work. Absolutely. I haven't thought about it as much with the comics because they're just fun, and you know, at the end of the day, I am in the mindset where I would sell, not necessarily sell the brand, but share rights, certainly with someone who had the ability to you know, push it wider and stuff like that. But with comics, I just think it works a little bit differently. You have sort of less total area that your product can really go to, right? You can find books everywhere, and you can find them certainly in more places than you can find comic books. And even though you find some of the more popular comics in bookstores, I've never seen a comic book in a grocery store, right? I've never seen a comic book at the airport. And so, without going too far down the list of other places you can find books, I think your distribution network is just wider that way. And then speaking to comics specifically, there are smaller publishers for comics in the same way that there are smaller publishers for books. I don't really think I want the written work to go to a small press. I guess I would try it, because beggars can't be choosers. But what I envisioned for the written work is that it just goes to something a little bit bigger, just to increase the opportunity for distribution and marketing and just getting myself out there. With the comic books, I think I would be okay with a smaller publisher. Smaller publishers for comics is a pretty new concept from what I can tell. There's not a lot of people who are doing it, but usually what you see is that an indie creator will start their own sort of comic book publishing company. Mm-hmm. When they start the title. I didn't do that for Ch05En because I'm not doing it for the books. But, if I was approached by a smaller publisher, these are people who have, at the end of the day, the ability to run a successful Kickstarter. They have, their own network of people who can help you be successful as a semi-independent creator. And I know that because as I've started networking more and more within these sort of sub-communities, I've run into people who have comics that are through sort of smaller publishers that only have 5 or 6 titles out right now. But I mean, the dude I know is this guy Danny Warner. He does this comic called Masks, which is really great. Matthias Zabayos is the artist for it, and the art is just really crazy. Anyway, he got together with this smaller publisher, Rats and Crows Publishing, I think is what it's called, and all he did was submit, I guess, the script. And they ran with it, and I mean, just cradle to the grave it really. I think he might have had Matthias with him. So when it came to running the Kickstarter, I mean, the guys know how to do it, right? And so I don't know how to do a successful Kickstarter. I could try, and maybe it would take me a couple. I'm so focused on so many things now that I just haven't been inclined to try and learn because I'm fortunate enough to be able to self-fund the creation of the comics, which is primarily, the art, and then buying the physical copies to take to the conventions and stuff like that. The way that I've set up everything, and I've been able to fund it myself. So, if a small publisher approached me, I would be totally into the idea, probably. But we would just have to see with that. But I'm super about it with the pros, like 100%. So
in this day and age, there's so many tools that you have to be independent and make yourself be successful independent. So that's why we're getting such a saturation of different and unique comics. So it's kind of it's a lot different from say 10, 20 years ago with comics. So it's a good thing. But
and it's probably ignorant of me to say too. I just like to say it's probably ignorant to assume that I would get to keep the rights to one set of the products and not the other. If if the book that I'm querying now ever lands a publishing deal, it's probably fair to say that they would want in on the rights to any works that are out currently. There's a fair assumption that they might maybe take everything down that's not the book. You don't know how it's going to go, but if they didn't, then either way. So anyway, okay, sorry, go ahead.
And I would say, just kind of then jumping on that, how many people have you talked to? And then if someone is trying to get something published right now, really, because I guess I've never done such a thing. Is there just a lot of people to call and talk to, or is there kind of only kind of a few big publishers, and then kind of everybody else runs through them, or You know, because, you know, movie studios, you know, it says New Line Cinema, but New Line Cinema is owned by somebody else who's owned by somebody else, and really there's like 3 studios. Are kind of books the same thing, or?
So it's a different process for both, right? So for books themselves, you know, traditionally or really just in the current market, what you're going to do is you're going to try and land a literary agent. So there's a whole querying process to get an agent to even want to see the manuscript in the first place. You know, the realistic expectation, you know, I sent out some more query letters last weekend, and you know, from the first conversation you have with a literary agent, it might be like 3 years before your book is actually on the shelf. Just because of the process. But so whether or not, you know, there's a whole range of publishers. I mean, yeah, there really are. There are a lot of small presses, all the way down to just like vanity presses, which is, you know, almost like you were just too lazy to self-publish, but they existed before self-publishing. But those are, you know, vanity presses where they help you put it together, but at the end of the day, the author sort of foots the bill for everything. You know, they may help subsidize the cost of physical copies, but you're paying everything else. You're marketing yourself. You're doing all of that. There are smaller publishers who really help mitigate those costs the way they understand it, and then there are the larger publishers, HarperCollins and stuff like that. There's certainly a wide network. When it comes to comic books, I think it's a much smaller sort of field to work with. You obviously have the big 2, DC, Marvel, but as you sort of said, it's really rare for your brand to get incorporated into their brand at all. And, you know, for DC especially, it might end up being more like a Vertigo than an actual DC title. Yep. For them, you know, you're applying as an author or an artist, you know, and you're working on their stuff. For the smaller, more quote-unquote independent stuff, Image is probably the biggest independent publisher, as I'm sure you guys know. Image has a whole process for pitching your comic to them. And they constantly accept submissions, which is really great. But that's because, you know, at the end of the day, they really just kind of help promote and distribute, right? It's on you as a team of creators, however to do it, to actually make the artwork, right? So for somebody like me, I would have to have either all of the storyline done, or at least the first 5 issues, or I'd have to be 100% sure that whoever I'm working with, we were going to stay the same team the whole time, which is what they require, right? I'm less familiar with the way you pitch like Dark Horse or any of them, but there are certainly less avenues for you to take your stuff if you were trying to get it traditionally published with comics. And then traditionally as well, you would not be trying to get a literary agent with the comic books. That's my understanding anyway. And in, you know, the aggregation of sort of literary agents that I've been doing, because you want to query far and wide, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, these people get so many emails from so many people like me that you want to sort of shotgun method it, because they might not even see your email in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, in the list of hundreds of names that I have over the, you know, last couple of months of just putting the list together so I could just sort of try and keep doing it, I've seen maybe 2 people actually talk about comic books, and most of them talking, you know, the closest you're going to get is picture books, right? But which are still more traditionally in the area of books than in comic books, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yes, there's less, but only for comics.
Okay, well, believe it or not, we're drawing on about the hour mark. I think this happened last time. We just started chatting, and then before we know it, the time flies. So, is there any last remarks that you wanna talk about? You know, we've covered your conventions. We've covered what you've been doing since Ch05En Volume 1. We've covered Volume 2 a little bit. So, is there anything that wasn't covered that you want to talk about, or any future plans? Or the floor is all yours. So, whatever you want to get into right now.
Yeah, we hit this a little bit, but now that we've meandered, I'd like to just bring it back. The comics come out March 1st. They'll be available digitally. I don't have a really good method of distribution online for the physical copies, but if you really want a physical one, we can make it work. And then, you know, I'd really like to say we touched on it a little bit, but man, Volume 2, I'm telling you, it's just a lot better. It really is. The first one, I was really proud of it. I thought it was a solid product. I feel really good selling it to people, but I really did I think we did a great job working together on this second volume of comics. And my commitment as an author is to always do my best to get better. So, if you read this second one and you like it, you can expect the next one to be even better than that one, because that's just kind of my goal. So I think that's it.
Go ahead and plug all your social media. Where can people find you? Where can they sign up? Drop those.
Yep. So Facebook, William.Dickstein. Hopefully the spelling will be somewhere on this podcast. You'll know it's me because you can see my face. But if you don't recognize me, I'm wearing a Ch05En shirt in my profile picture. So I'm on Twitter @DicksteinW. And I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to connect there, totally fine with that. And that's kind of it. Not on Instagram, probably should be. Not on Snapchat, probably should be. Yeah.
That's what all the cool kids are using nowadays.
I don't know what my problem is, but I just can't do it. And I get really great interaction on Facebook. And at the end of the day, I think that's what I'm most concerned about. Kind of like I did with the people at conventions. I started following authors that I really like and sort of trying to mimic what they do. And, a lot of the authors that I really, really like are active in a particular way on Facebook, and it's the way that I'm active on there, which is that it's, not a fan page. It's just my profile. And they get really great interaction. And so in trying to sort of copy them, that's where we've really gone. So that's where I've just put the most effort, to be honest. Well, so, if you send me a friend request, if you send me a friend request, I'm going to accept it. Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think as a consumer, it just makes you feel better to get the product if you have a personal connection with the author. And a lot of my favorite people in the in I like comic books and like recipes and food, and the stuff that I like is I try to connect. Like you said, if you like something that an author writes, then you write to them. And I operate kind of the same way. If I find something I like, I kind of contact them. I'm like, hey, interact with them, and it really goes a long way. And it goes to show, who really appreciates the fans. And I think that's kind of what you have to do with nowadays with social media. So it creates that personal bond, and I think consumers really like that. So I agree. I'm a fan of what you're doing with the social media. But that being said, all of your products are available on Amazon. Are they on any other thing besides Amazon? Is there any like Comixology or anything else you're looking into?
Yeah. So man, you know what? We'll call it laziness. I don't know what my problem was with not trying to put that first volume on Comixology, but it turns out it's really easy. And so yeah, that's a project for the next week, is to go through the submittal process, because I literally have everything to do it already done. So hopefully within a couple of weeks, probably not in time for March 1st, but not too soon after that, hopefully, if I'm approved. I don't think it takes very long for them to put you up. So Comixology in the near future. Otherwise, Amazon, yeah. Or conventions if you want to come see me.
What are some of your upcoming conventions they can see you at?
So I'll actually be at a local library event. Early March, I'll be at a Pen and Palette in downtown Las Vegas, not a library event. The next day, I'll be at a library event. So the same weekend in March. It's like the 12th and the 13th or whatever. And then after that, the next event will be Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con, which is in June. And then definitely going to be at Kamikaze in October in Los Angeles. I'm going to be looking for at least one other event in the July-August timeframe. And then depending on where we're at with the budget, really, maybe something in November, if I can find a show that has historically done well that's nearby.
Perfect. All right. Well, Kyle, any other questions or anything you want to say?
No, I think we got it, as long as we got all the plugs in.
Do you still have your apparel and stuff on Redbubble, or you have your store? Because I know I have a...
Go ahead. Say again?
I was gonna say, I know I have that Chosen shirt. It's, believe it or not, it's one of my weight loss goals to fit into because I ordered it and I ordered the extra large and it fits a little smaller than that. So it keeps me motivated. I try it on every now and then. I'm like, I'm not there yet. So it's one of my goals to fit into that and be able to rep that. I was just wondering if that stuff is still available if people want to be part of your mobile street team.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And we have some stuff in the bank too that I'm going to be putting up in the next week or so. Also, I'm going to do the Comixology thing first, and then go back and clean up the Redbubble a little bit, put some new stuff on there, and then there actually is a wiki, but we're not going to plug it because it has like no content. So that project for the next couple months.
You're supposed to have users create wiki content. That's how Wikipedia works. So, all right, come on, fans, let's get on this. You just have to fact check it. That's it. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Okay. So we'll do that for you, and you just have to fact check it.
I'm gonna start pushing that. That was a good point. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
All right. Well, on behalf of the C3 show, we definitely appreciate your time again, and we thank you for doing the interview. It's always a great time. So I don't have any more questions or anything. So buy all of his books. His books are amazing. I love them. So.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys.
Read Grizz, Chosen, Grizz Volume 2. It's definitely worth your time. It's a fantastic book.
It is great.
I'm not going to say it's Batman because it's a